And thank you so much for having me, Renata and Dr. Kazarian. I really appreciate being here. I'm going to just share my screen so I can start the presentation. And please, as we go along, if you want to put any questions into the chat box, please do so. I will have time at the end where we'll have questions. And if you have any comments along the way, please let me know. So just a quick introduction. Thank you so much, Renata. That was a very kind introduction. I am the CEO of National Positions. We were founded in 2004. This is our building. Unfortunately, it's empty right now, other than me. So I've always been in tech, and I just like anything to do with water, swimming, scuba, paddleboarding, and so very passionate about those things. But of course, extremely passionate about digital marketing. Today, what I'm going to do is talk to you a little bit about key digital insights and trends. I'll make it very practical. It'll be all about how to build your practice, both in the fourth quarter of 2020 as well as going into 2021. So once you understand these trends, we'll put those all into kind of a structured digital marketing strategy that I've put together, and then hopefully walk through that process. And that process actually looks at your capabilities and defines it against your competition. It looks at tactics for driving traffic to your practice, and then how to convert those visitors to patients, and then bring those patients back again, which is one of the cheapest and easiest ways to be successful. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump into those key insights. The first thing is digital transformation. And I'm actually going to jump into each one of those areas right off the bat here. So the first part is, this is a Google slide about e-commerce growth that happened during the shelter in place. And you'll see, and this is very, very exciting for my business, which has been growing during this tough time, this pandemic. But it also is an opportunity for all of us, where we can see that the e-commerce growth over the last couple of months has been the same as over the prior 10 years. So the takeaway here is, if you aren't really bought into digital right now, you really have to be. It's just a great opportunity. This is the area that to show that you can grow your business. The next part is to talk about machine learning and artificial intelligence. So everything that you're doing online pretty much goes into big data today. And there are lots of opportunities with machine learning and AI. They happen right across this customer journey. And this slide kind of shows you how the customer journey works, whether it's creating demand generation, or getting people to come to your website, converting that traffic, and then getting those people to come back again. But every single section of it has an opportunity for you to track data, store data, and all the big digital marketing companies out there, whether you're talking about Google or Microsoft or Facebook, all of them are tracking tons and tons of great information so that they can target just the right people that mean that you can get in front of just the right people at the right time. And and I'm going to go into more detail here, because I think there are a lot of opportunities for you with marketing automation and with machine learning and with AI. But there are places like the way that you're handling your email marketing, the way that you can combine your offline data with online data. So the next area is voice search. So a lot of people, especially interestingly enough, 55 plus, are using voice search now more than ever before. And you might ask, why 55 plus? Well, some of them have a difficult time typing, and there are just so many great devices, like having Siri and Cortana and Google Now, where they could just ask a question and they'll get an answer. So the way to take advantage of that is to build content around voice and to really build very short answers to type of questions people might ask. And I'll go into more detail about that as we go through this presentation. But as search becomes more and more voice-based, you're going to see that building out your website for voice is going to be critical. So, kind of understanding what are the questions people asking about LASIK and how to answer those questions can be very beneficial. So the next part is personalization. Nobody wants to get messages that are general. And we take it for granted today when we use something like Netflix that we're going to get recommendations that are going to be based on our viewing suggestions. So why don't we personalize all of our communications via digital? So when people are coming to your website and they're landing on a particular page, are you welcoming them back? When you get an email, is it customized to the particular procedure? If someone has an inquiry, is it personalized to that inquiry? So all of these things are absolutely critical. And if you do this, you make people feel a lot more like you're engaged and you're not sending out a mass email to people. So for instance, here's an example of someone in retail where they're saying, Jack, were these the boots you wanted? They're 30% off. Now you can imagine you can do the same thing with the way that you retargeting. So if someone comes in and they want cataract surgery, well, if you're sending out emails about general LASIK and you're not being very specific about cataracts, then people feel like you really aren't listening to them. And that's where we want to go with the way that we're marketing going forward into the next couple of years, is to really think about your web pages, your email, your retargeting, your videos. All of these things can be personalized now. And it makes that interaction just that much better. So then this is an area that we're working on really hard at National Positions. Lead quality is really important to each and every one of you. And the opportunity to take existing data and overlay it with your Google AdWords or your Bing, Microsoft Bing advertising is something which is very new and is something that could really give you a leg up. So the whole idea here is, if you know these are the prospects that turned into patients, and you can take that data and you can feed it back into your Google Ads account or into your Facebook account, you can get many more people just like your best prospects. And we have seen, and this is also a Google slide, but that there's a 20% increase incremental revenue in feeding back this data into Google Ads, and also a reduction in cost, or a 30% cost reduction in being able to combine the offline data, as we call it, the lead offline data that might be sitting in your CRM or your patient database, with your advertising information. The next area is something you may not have heard of. It's kind of techie, but it's really important. And that is something called Core Web Vitals. There's going to be a major update happening on Google starting in the first quarter of next year. And it looks at the way that websites load. So it's not only looking at the speed of your website, it's also looking at how the website paints. So I don't know if you've ever been on a site and you're trying to interact with the site and it takes a while to load and you don't know why. And this is especially an issue when it comes to mobile devices. But it's also the way that the screen paints. So Google is asking us to have our screens render from the top to the bottom and not have things start loading from the bottom and then the middle and then the top and then all over the place. And you've probably seen this before where you're loading a web page and it kind of jumps around. So those are part of the core web vitals. If you don't apply the changes for the core web vitals, you will get penalized next year. So it's important to know about this. And this is, I know that this is an e-commerce example, but this came from Shopify where they're showing a site that makes $100,000 a day. And obviously it's a huge, huge site. But 1 second improvement can generate $7,000 of additional additional revenue by having a faster site. So 1 second delay on the other hand, so that's kind of a 7% improvement. 1 second delay, people have no patience today, you will see 11% loss in page views. And a 1 second delay in load time is also 7% loss in conversions. So that is one area that you really need to understand. And I have a link I believe I have a link in this presentation, which will take you to a Google tester where you can test the current status of your core web vitals. The next area, which is really interesting, and I know I either love or hate reviews. A lot of the feedback I get is that people hate Yelp. And one of the reasons they hate Yelp is that Yelp will not listen to you when you have a problem that isn't legitimate. Like for instance, a competitor goes and writes something nasty about your site or your company and it had nothing to do with you. And or you respond to a client, someone that isn't even a client, and you get a negative review. So one piece of good news is that Apple is really jumping into this market. You're going to see them cutting out Yelp. If you have an Apple device, you are using Yelp and Foursquare right now when you see results come back. But Apple is introducing ratings in Maps. And so this is going to be the new exciting area for us, is to try and get reviews on Apple and on Apple Maps. So that's something that I'm excited about because most people don't know about it. And this is going to be one of those early adopter situations. Then I just wanted to show you this, what chatbots are. Here's someone on a chatbot who's going and buying Ray-Bans. And you can see this whole process, choosing the Ray-Ban that they want. They come here, they buy the glasses that they think are really cool. This lady who's talking over there is actually a chatbot, a robot. The person looks at what that pair of glasses looks like on their face. And she says, yeah, that's great. Now come into 12 Grand Street in New York City. All of that is done automatically. So that's chatbot. So if you think about, and I'm going to move to the next slide because it's a little bit irritating seeing all that changing. But if you think about telephone trees, everyone today is used to pressing 1 for customer service and 2 for sales and 3 for whatever. That is what chatbots can do for you online. And we have been really introducing a lot of chatbots for our clients over the last year or so. And this is an area that I think is going to grow a lot more because you want to have that 24/7 type of service, and that might not be happening with your team. Like you number one, you may not have people answering the phone or answering or being available on the website 24/7. Of course, a chatbot can do that and can push people in the right direction. It can get people to certain web pages. It can have them play videos. It can answer basic questions. And it can do that all through automation. And that's a really exciting area, not only because it costs you very little compared to having a human involved in it, but it also, it's going to be right every single time. The last trend that I want to talk about is privacy. So we all know that HIPAA has made us very conscious of the data that we have and what isn't available, to divulge in different places, and you've had to be very careful about customer records and medical records. Well, online, there have been a number of trends which are a little concerning for us in the digital marketing area, but they started out of Europe with the GDPR requirements. These are all privacy requirements. The state of California has done the same thing about if you're a certain size business, you've got to warn people about cookies. Now, everybody uses cookies for marketing. And this is really great because it allows you to see whether you have a repeat person coming back to your website or not. And so it's a little concerning for us. There will be, I'm sure, other ways of tracking people who are coming to your website and are interacting with different pages on your website over time. But for right now, as Californians or as Americans, we have different types of requirements that are impacting our business in a different way. So this is something that is kind of like stay tuned, but this is going to impact online marketing. And of course, Facebook and Google and others have been really concerned about this because it does change the way in which you get information. So on the one side, there's concern about privacy. On the other side, there's our benefit of getting the right message to the right people at the right time. And that's where having data on people is helpful. So I just want to talk a little bit about a methodology that I developed. It's called PRACE, or Plan and Race to the Top. Of course, you've got to have your acronyms out there, but there's a planning, reach, act, convert, and engage stage. And you can think of digital marketing as a funnel. And so there's a plan stage where this is an area that we find with companies where they just don't have the right marketing, positioning, pricing, and all the other areas in place. And then we're driving a lot of traffic to their website and they wonder, well, why is it not converting? So that's kind of like the step back stage, which I know 99% of you have got handled. But I'm going to show you how to handle that as well, and like in a systematic way. The reach is how do you drive traffic to your site? And that I think a lot of you know, but I'm going to go into that. The next two stages are really, really important. They have to do with act or interacting with your website. What is the customer journey? What are the buyer stages? Having content for people at each stage in the buyer process. And then that conversion, are you asking people to pick up the phone? Are you asking people to fill out the form? And then the last part, which is about repeat purchase and how to get people, how to get patients, clients to come back again. And we'll go into each one of those stages as I go through my presentation. So the first part is reviewing your capabilities and opportunities. So I hope Renata doesn't mind. I'm showing some Doherty information here, but it's really great because if you were in Los Angeles and you were trying to beat out Doherty laser vision, how would you do it? So you want to start out by benchmarking your competitors. Do you have a clearly defined set of goals and objectives? How data-driven is it? Do you know who your audiences are? And I'm going to go through each one of those in a structured approach. So the first thing is to have a way of looking at your competitors. And I think this is one of those areas that so often is forgotten, is to do a competitive analysis. And the beauty of online is it's all there. I mean, I remember the old days of going to trade shows and spying on competitors and picking up their collateral, and none of that is needed anymore. All you need to do is do a Google search and say, wow, well, what are they saying? How are they positioning it? How much are they charging? So I have a kind of this structure, and of course we'll share this presentation with all of you. And I do have a whole strategic kind of platform that you can use as well. But when you're looking at this, it's like, well, let's have a look at this through that funnel. What does their content look like? What is their PPC strategy? What is their SEO strategy? What are they doing for social? What kind of partnerships do they have? What are their core brand messages? What are they saying? Like, we're the cheapest. Well, no, we're the best we have the the best service or the best results or whatever it is your core branding message. And we spoke about personalization and conversion, and of course I didn't even talk about mobile devices, but what does your website look like on mobile versus desktop? Because by now you really should be developing everything for mobile, as mobile is generating well in excess of about 65% of traffic for LASIK inquiries. So mobile is so important. And then of course the last part, like, well, what are they saying about service? What are they saying about their community and the ongoing work that they're doing? So these are the kinds of things that are really business questions, but you can go and do a couple of Google searches and you will get that answer right away. So the next thing is to understand your personas, to really understand who you are marketing to. So I've got an example here of Jessica. She's 30 years old. She's a female. Get all this information so that when you're writing your content for your website, you can really be cognizant of like who you're writing for. So if I just say, you've got a soccer mom with 2.5 kids who drives a minivan and lives in the suburbs, you know who you're writing for. And this is so important. And a lot of people don't do this. So we do this kind of customer persona development. Again, this is something that is really important when you developing your website and you're designing the way that you actually position things. And then the next part is really having dashboards. This is a dashboard that we put together for Doherty, but it's like understanding, well, how much money am I spending? How much money am I spending? What kind of conversions do I have? Things like that are really important, because if you don't know what your goals are, you're never going to be able to achieve, or it's going to be very hard for you to achieve your goals. So now we're going to move down that funnel. We know that we've got the business in place. We know we've done our competitive analysis. How do we go out and target and drive traffic to your website? So there are 4 main areas that work well for LASIK. And that is local SEO, paid search, social media marketing, and content marketing. And I'm going to dive into each one of those areas. So first is to talk about local SEO. And again, I'm using DLV as an example, but they really, the part I want to show is that there are really 2 very, very important parts on SEO that you need to be cognizant of. And the one is this Google Maps. So Google owns so much of the top of the screen. When someone types in, like, for instance, they say, LASIK surgery, Los Angeles, or they say, a LASIK surgeon near me. You want to be in these maps because Google has placed you at the, they've placed their own Google Maps at the top of the search engines. And then, of course, you want a really good website and you want to rank well for SEO, because that actually impacts where you show up in the maps. And they're just a couple of things that really matter, and we'll go into them, like your star ratings and also your location. Okay, so location is something on a map that is your competitive advantage. If you're in Westlake Village, like Doherty is, and in many other cities, that is one thing that really is something that is an advantage. So you are given a little bit of a push by Google just by the fact of where you fit in. So I've broken out some of the key ranking factors for you. We call this the 3-pack, which is the maps or the local pack, and then there's your website. So number 1 in your maps is where you're located. So there's nothing you can do about that. If you're not located in a great area and you're trying to get people, like, if you're in Beverly Hills, well, gosh, you've got an advantage of getting people in Beverly Hills. There are ways of getting people that are not in Beverly Hills to be attracted to that area, but it's harder. as an example. Link signals are other websites that are linking back to you. This is what your SEO company can do for you, is build these backlinks. Reviews are so important. As you can see, 15.4%. So you're having reviews on a consistent basis. I have another slide on that because of how important it is. And then making sure that you have obviously things like wherever you're located and keywords that are appropriate in your on your pages. Being in some of the top citation sites. So a lot of people will come to you and say, you need to be in 50 citation sites. Those are things like the Yellow Pages and Yelp and doctors' sites and things like that. The answer is you don't really need to be. You need to be in the ones, if you search for instance, just again, an example like LASIK surgeon Los Angeles, see which directories come up. Those are the ones that you really need to be concerned about. And it's more important to be in those directories and be deep in those directories than be in every single directory. You'll get companies like Yext coming to you and saying, you really need to be in 50 directories. You do not need to be in 50 directories, and it really doesn't help you. But if Yelp comes up, make sure you're working on Yelp. Google always comes up, make sure you've got a good presence on Google. Maybe if health grades comes up, make sure that you got great scores on health grades and that you are responding to patients if they say something negative or positive in health grades. And then, of course, it's your website, linking signals, again, those, if you, having the right title tags and meta tags in your pages, those are all the technical things that your SEO company will do for you, and making sure that this is where machine learning comes through. When people click through to your website, are they clicking off of your website or are they staying in your site? These are areas that I'll talk about in just a moment. So content is so important. And we talked about the personas and making sure we have that, like the Jessica example that I had before, you know exactly who you're writing for, trying to find that sweet spot in your content. And then the other area that I want to talk about is not only knowing who you're writing for, but writing content throughout the funnel. And this is a mistake that a lot of people make. They just want to write about themselves. And I'm not trying to criticize anybody, but like, hey, you know what, come buy from me, come and get your surgery done at my particular facility because I'm better than anybody else. Well, what people want to know is, well, LASIK surgery to some people is scary. What is it? So you want to write about the people at the top of the funnel. What do they care about at the top of the funnel? How painful is it? How long is that surgery going to last? How much does it cost? How much is covered by insurance? Just all those commonly asked questions are the ones that you wanted, and you will capture a lot of people by having great content at the top of the funnel. So now you've answered all those questions about surgery, about how the healing process works and all these types of things, which Google loves. You'll get a lot of free traffic if you have that on your website. And then the next part is now people are deciding, well, am I going to go with this LASIK surgeon or that LASIK surgeon or whatever? That's kind of more in the middle of the funnel. And in the bottom of the funnel are the conversion areas. How do I convert that traffic to now buy from me rather than buying from another now that they've, as we're saying in the beginning, like, are we competing against, are they going to just buy contacts or glasses, or are they more involved in, like, now they're at that stage where they're saying, you know what, I'm really interested in LASIK and I'm making that decision. And then the bottom of the funnel is converting them and saying, we are the right place. And things you can do there are, people are worried right now with COVID, about cleanliness and about safety and about a variety of other areas. Having that, a walkthrough, a video walkthrough of what they could experience, and having testimonials and having doctors speak. Those are all areas that will help you convert at the bottom of the funnel. And a lot of this goes into video. When you're building videos, and I won't go into a lot of detail here, but when you are building videos, just remember about mobile being first. And that's why I have all of these recommendations about how to build your video and being, like more of a close-up. And again, You have people that have issues with their eyesight. You want to make sure that if you've got any writing there, that of course it's clear and the calls to actions are in the videos as well. So next is reviews, and I have a special slide on reviews because it's not only having more reviews than other people, but it's also how often you get reviews, the volume of reviews, the timeliness of reviews. Obviously 4 and 5 star reviews are much better than 1, 2, and 3 star reviews, of course. And so one of the key takeaways is ask for reviews. Have this as part of your typical process, is to be asking for reviews all the time. Make sure that you always respond to people, even if it's negative. You want to try and make it right, because often when you do reach out and you're trying to make it right and you respond, number one, the search engines like that. Number two, people might change their review from a negative to a positive. And of course, all of us as business owners, we all cringe when we get a negative review. It's the worst thing possible. But that's the way to handle it, and but to make it a key part. And of course, when you have someone and they're happy, oh boy, I can't believe how wonderful the surgery went, that's when you got to ask them for that review. Okay, so let's talk about pay-per-click advertising. Now, this is a great way to get a quick way to get people to your site. When I was speaking just before we started, Dr. Kazarian was saying how expensive it is to get people to come in and become patients, and that is an issue. Pay-per-click advertising is amazing. It is also more expensive than some of the other ways of getting people to interact with you on your site, but it is a wonderful mechanism, and it can get you some business very quickly. So the question is, which is the ad platform to be on, Google or Microsoft? Well, it all depends on, Microsoft is much smaller, makes up about 15% of the market share, but a lot of those are people who are not very sophisticated digitally. And so the answer really is, it depends on who your target audience are. If they're an older audience, Bing or Microsoft is amazing. If you're looking at a younger audience and kind of more of a more overall encompassing, then Google is the way as well. I would say choose both. And then call tracking. If you're not doing call tracking today, you must, because you're never going to get a return on investment or understand what your return on investment is unless you truly understand what your call tracking metrics are. And of course, listening into calls. I sometimes get clients who are astonished at how customer service is managing those calls. Sometimes it's astonished, happy, and other times astonished, not so happy. But you really, if you only have your online statistics for Google Analytics and you don't have your call tracking integrated together, you're not getting the full picture, and that's super important. And then, of course, we spoke a moment ago about this key competitive advantage, which is to combine your offline data with your Google Ads. Highly recommend this. This will give you, an improved ROI, and something that we really have been starting to embrace. It's very, very new, and can get you some really great results. And then social. So social is another way. It was interesting because when they had that congressional summit and they pulled Mark Zuckerberg in front of Congress, and they were kind of amazed about all the information that gets stored by Facebook and Instagram. Yes, every single thing gets stored in Facebook and Instagram, and all of these big marketing services, they store everything. And so then also store the fact that if someone's saying, hey, should I buy another pair of glasses, or should I get LASIK done? So that kind of thing, the in-market people who are talking about LASIK surgery, this is where social media is really, really great. You can get out there, you can find those audiences, you can nurture them, you can get into them, you can retarget them in some cases, in some states and in some countries. In other cases, you cannot retarget because of the privacy to do with medical. But certainly finding audiences that are interested in LASIK in your area, social can do it. The other side is like trying to, and I wasn't sure where to put this slide, in the bringing people back on board, or but here's one of our, this is Parkhurst New Vision, which is a client of ours in Austin, Texas, and they use a lot of video and the doctors speaking, and they have contests and like getting the patient of the year and things like that. These are all ideas that you could use in your practice as well. Okay, so now we're moving down the funnel and we figured out how to drive people through all of those things. Now we're moving into converting them. So I spoke about in the planning stage how important it is to kind of like understand what your value proposition is, how to differentiate yourself, what you want to be, what your benefits are. That's really, really important. That's just a questionnaire that we have for some of our clients, so that we can understand where they're going. These are some of the conversion best practices. Having a headline that converts, having bullet points because people aren't going to read big pieces of content, embracing video because video converts today, especially on mobile. People are lazy, they don't want to read, maybe they can't even read because their eyesight isn't that great, or they're having difficulty reading. So use videos. Downloadable content, building out content so that people can actually take it and look at your service versus other people. Maybe you have a nice ebook so you can capture that email address, because a lot of this is all about nurturing people into the queue. Calls to action, obviously having awards that you've won and things like that. I didn't talk about that in the beginning. I talk a lot about Forbes because I'm a contributor to Forbes. Hey, that all of a sudden gives you some kind of view of people in some areas. Maybe other people don't like Forbes, or I have a podcast on Bloomberg Radio. All those things help us with selling. The same thing for you. What awards have you won? Were you on KTLA or some kind of TV station or radio station or newspaper that you were featured in? All those things are great ways of building credibility, because it's all about that trust factor online. People don't know who to trust, and that's where the reviews come in. And this also comes to your webpage as well. So now I'll get to retaining your customers and understand that this is one of the cheapest ways to generate more business. And thanks to Renata Stone and Dr. Kazarian, who told me a little bit about where the repeat purchase comes in, like vision throughout people's lives, should I say, where people's eyes change. They may have LASIK surgery more than once. People come in for cataract surgery. People come and talk about, they have myopia. They have different reasons why you want to reach out to them and get them to come back. So once they're in your database, there's your data as well. You want to bring them back in. And you also want to get those referrals. And so this is where, you can have a thank you sequence of emails. Marketing automation is really important at this stage. If you don't have some kind of email marketing sequence, I highly recommend you get one. You can get, email is so cheap, and building this out is something that you can use over and over again. So you want to get, also, having people see other, if you can retarget people in some way through a social media plan, having a loyalty or re-engagement program, having great customer service. You might not think about that from a digital perspective, but it is a digital play as well, because people come to your website, they fill out a form. How quickly are you reacting to that form? People come onto your website and you've got live chat. Is there someone on live chat? These are all areas that impact you overall in your response. So here's an example of a lead nurturing. So someone comes in, they ask for information about LASIK surgery. Do you have a sequence of emails? Do you have ebooks? Do you have marketing collateral that you can send them to? Do you have videos that you can send to them? Because maybe they're shopping around. These are all really great things. But also, once you have completed the surgery, what was the experience like? Maybe you want to, and a lot of the reviews management platforms, like for instance, we have a reviews program that will filter out the 1, 2, and 3 stars. But if you ask someone, how was your experience? And someone had a negative experience, and then but you actually asking them internally so that they can vent, you have a way of getting that so you can respond to it internally instead of them putting something on Yelp. And so these are, that's the point about email marketing. And so I'm kind of at the end here in my 45 minutes in, is really to summarize what I spoke about already. And that is at the plan stage, making sure you've got that business plan, going back and doing all the normal things and saying how absolutely easy it is to do that. We have other tools. I'm very, very happy to, please reach out to me afterwards. We have a lot of other tools that will tell you how much people are spending on pay-per-click advertising and what kind of keywords people are bidding on and that kind of thing. Those are not maybe as readily available as just having a plan to say, well, what kind of content do people have? How many videos do they have? How are they positioning them out in the marketplace? And then on the reach stage, of course, deciding what you want to use. Do you want to use Facebook? Do you want to use Google? Do you want to use SEO? And then really working on that interaction part, which is so important. How do you get those people to convert? I didn't mention heat maps. There are all sorts of great pieces of software that you can put on today. They can do video views. You can actually watch people on your website. Not actually see the people, but you can actually track where they're going, how they interact with the content. You absolutely want to do that as well through programs called Hotjar or Lucky Orange. And then that last part, that advocacy, which is the cheapest and best way. It's the word of mouth. It's the getting people to come back again and really be happy with your service. So at that point, I'm just going to stop the share and just open it up. And thank you so much for all those people who put, I see there's 6 questions. Maybe I'll go to those first. So the first question, thank you, Dr. Kazarian. The competitor analysis depends on how you define your space. Are other refractive surgeons your competitors or other targets or disposable spending? It all depends on where you are in the funnel. Earlier on, it's alternative disposable spending options. Yeah, so I mean, these are all things that I think this is a great point. I know we don't want to look at ourselves as being competitors or competing against each other, but I think you want to also look at those direct and indirect competitors when you're looking at this and doing all of those kinds of searches. Okay. Cornelia is asking about the Apple ratings.
So excuse me, Bernard, let me just go back to the other point for a second.
Yes.
There was actually a discussion on one of our forums today about the topic of, we've had a big bump in LASIK with COVID. And the question is it temporary or is it permanent? And probably some of both. I think some of it's going to be lasting, but it was about this idea about people were just directing more disposable spending toward LASIK because they're not going out to dinner and going on trips and doing those other things. And I think that one of the strategic marketing positioning that people can do right now is to think, how can they sustain that priority space on the priority list of spending after COVID abates? How can they continue to stay in that not elective procedure for rich people category, but a functional procedure for the working person who needs to see well without glasses?
Yeah, so remember when I was talking about top of the funnel content development and people are going through these questions in their mind, should I buy another pair of glasses? Should I do LASIK? I think you can capture a lot of people through content development. And just one of the areas that I highly recommend is to kind of sit there and brainstorm all these questions. So of course you can't necessarily determine exactly where people are going to spend their money, but they're going through these questions. And if your content shows up in a search result, because you've thought about comparing different types of vision correction. Should I do LASIK? Should I do this? Should I do that? Google loves those types of questions and answers, and you've got a great chance of capitalizing on those types of customer journey questions. And the other way as well is maybe, I didn't really talk too much about content marketing. If you are a person who likes to write, there are a lot of, there's something called Hero, or Help a Reporter Out, or Haro, should I say, Haro, where you can write articles about LASIK. People are always looking for both online and newspapers like the Huffington Post. They're always looking for articles about these kinds of trends. Maybe people don't know about this trend that you just brought up about, disposable income and things like that.
Thank you.
Cornelia
had a question, I think. Cornelia?
I just want to read one more question. So John said, thank you for the question, John. Is it true that consumers have become more savvy about the integrity of a paid versus organic? That's a really interesting question. I think that you would think that people would know the difference between paid and organic. And often I think as people become more computer literate and more savvy, they do. Google has been very smart about this. Every single pixel that you see when you are looking on your, when you get a search result, or if you've got an Android phone, they've thought about every single pixel. Unfortunately, what's happening is that a lot of the SEO value that we had before, and I started my company as an SEO company. So, I'm loath to say this, but it is harder to get SEO organic results show up, especially on a mobile device. It's much better on a desktop, but that's why the maps are so important and getting into the maps. But there's another test that was done. I can't remember which university, if it was Harvard or wherever it was, but they looked at the conversion rate that happened in search results if you show up in both paid and organic. And if you show up in both, that trust factor with your name, as you saw, I showed, the Doherty Vision and how they show up in the maps, and they show up in the PPC, and they show up in the organic. All of a sudden now you're more trustworthy. Wow, it's showing up everywhere. And your chance of at least one of those areas clicking through and becoming a client has become much greater.
Awesome. Thank you, Bernard. And we had a question from Cornelia about the Apple ratings. How do you see that, engaging? How can we get a head start on that maybe?
Yeah, so this is still like brand new. It just got announced a couple of days ago. Like that's how new that trend is. I'm actually looking to see, I still see a lot of Yelp review results coming up in Apple. So I think that this is going to happen earlier on or maybe later on in Q4 in this quarter, or in Q1. But as we see it, I think we've got to ask our patients to review you. You got to be like very specific and say, oh, I see you got an Apple. I see you got an iPhone. Do you mind rating us on Apple, on kind of that Apple rating system? So I see that a lot of people don't do that, and it just is, whether it's the person at the front desk or that email that you send out, is just having that as part of your everyday process, is to just ask people. Especially when they're happy. And so yeah, I'll maybe send an update to Renato once I have more, so you can send to the group so that you can get a head start.
And Bernard, I had a question too. I know, like, for example, one of my girlfriends is, recently pregnant, and I was shopping for, some maternity wear for her or whatever. And now on my Facebook feed and my Google feed, I'm getting endless ads for, maternity clothing and stuff. So my question is, is there a way we can do that for LASIK, right? So for example, I would love to maybe learn how to geofence and target patients that are searching for contact lenses or glasses so that we can offer them LASIK, but we haven't, I don't know, how do we do that? Is that possible or?
Yeah, so unfortunately, in your industry, HIPAA comes into play here. So all of Google, Bing, and Facebook have very strict guidelines about retargeting, and they just won't let you do that. So what you're seeing where you're being followed around the web, and we do this all the time, like for our fashion clients and all that, and they're like, not only that, but I looked at that pair of shoes, and now that pair of shoes is followed. It's great. It's awesome. But we're very restricted in what we can do because of privacy. So even though, and I'm not sure about glasses and contacts, and maybe that's an idea that if people are in market for those, because maybe they're looked at as less of a, of a surgery type. Well, they're not a surgery. So I don't know the exact answer to that, but I will research that because it's really interesting. So if someone's in market for a new pair of glasses, can we retarget them, or can we target them? I know that a big part of where Google has gone is copying Facebook. So Facebook, as I was saying, with the big data, have really collected data on everything that you're doing. So if every keystroke you do on Facebook, just know from now onwards, probably the big brother is watching you. But they know that. There's something called in market. So once you start saying, I'm interested in a pair of glasses, or, oh, my vision hasn't been so great lately, I couldn't see the birds in the trees when I went out with my kid, or whatever it is, that type of thing is something that allows you to create in-market audiences, and you can target those in a more behavioral way. So you may not be able to retarget, but you can target people that are in market for your particular, for things like vision correction, which is kind of interesting. And this is a new development that Google's really jumped into to be more on par with what the social media platforms are doing.
Awesome. I have a couple more questions. I think, Mary, we just talked about that a little bit more, elaborate. And then Dr. Kazarian.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, I'm sitting here looking at this group and thinking about the RSA and what we're doing together, Bernard, and looking at your amazing talk today. Really, just beautiful talk. Thank you. And thinking, you could probably spend weeks teaching us things. And I wonder if we could, and we'll talk about it offline, I won't pin you down right now, but wonder if you'd be interested in holding a course for us online, a more in-depth course. It'd be, obviously potentially a way for you to get more clients from the RSA membership, but it might be a way for us to form a marketing consortium, a way for us to come together and develop materials, resources, and maybe even campaigns. We did this a few years ago in social media very successfully. We had about 40-something practices participate with theme-based social media that was going across the world with different platforms, and just we provided graphics and videos and stuff in a month.
That would be so exciting. I would love to do that. Thank you so much for the very kind comment as well. I think a lot of us are in our own location. We were talking about how important location is in Google Maps, where you're not necessarily competing with one another, even location-based. And I know obviously some of you are, but not everybody. And so it's great to be able to share that content, or that what has worked in one area. For instance, what's happened in LA could work in New York and Chicago and Buffalo and wherever, Boise. All of those things work, best practices across every, across multiple environments. So yes, that would be absolutely wonderful. And I do have a kind of a very structured approach in that framework, where maybe you can walk down that framework, and I'm happy to do it one-on-one as well if anyone is interested, where you could look for the holes. Like maybe I don't have personas right now. Maybe my content isn't handling people at all stages of the funnel. possibly the way that I've done my pricing. I haven't looked at, I haven't done a competitive analysis, or maybe I shouldn't talk about pricing at all because I just want, you know, people to call, or maybe I don't have something in place for conversion. Those are many of the other things like.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I guess you do consulting services on that level as well. You'll come in and evaluate.
Yeah, well, I mean, really what we're trying to do is that's all free, 100%. And, you know, we'd love you, feel bad that I don't know if I can say this, but obviously we'd love to have any of you as clients. That would be fantastic. And even if you're not, no obligation, and, you know, just come along and we'll help you.
Be in touch. Thank you. Appreciate that very much.
Yeah, I can share. I've been very happy with the results. Outstanding by far. Doubled our leads. So Bernard's done an amazing job. The results speak for themselves. Awesome. And then any other questions for Bernard today?
What I will do is I'll send out if you don't, Renata, do you mind? We'll send out the presentation. Yeah. On the very last page is my contact information. Please feel free, whether it's through LinkedIn or email or phone or whatever, just please feel free to reach out, and love to chat and help in any way I possibly could.
That's great. And we'll be producing it as well and posting it for the membership to see. And we'll be back in touch with you. We certainly appreciate your being here. Renata, thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. Appreciate being invited today. Thank you again.